Has someone ever challenged you to something that they didn't know who are an expert at? If so, how did it turn out for you/them? I was out skating in my driveway one day practicing a difficult trick for me over a 6-inch tall board. I had it on its side trying to land the trick from only 6 inches in height, and I kept screwing it up for a good hour. I was trying to land a 360 heel flip, and I always had trouble with that trick, cause I skate goofy to begin with. My neighbor must have been watching, because he comes out, grabs the board I'm jumping over, and turns it on its side so now it's 2 feet tall. He pulls $100 bill out of his wallet and says if you can jump over the board and land it, then I'll give this to you. What he didn't know is that I was shitty at the trick I was practicing. But among my skater friends, I was known for my ridiculously height. I'm not very tall, but I could put my knees to my chest in a jump and clear 30 inches regularly. So I took the bet, backed way off, took a running start, cleared the board, stuck the landing, and came to a screeching sideways stop about 6 inches from him. He knew he got played and just laughed while he gave me the money. Good thing too, cause I needed a new deck right then pretty badly. Mine's kind of dumb, but I think it still counts. At work I'm kind of the Google Sheets expert and I make lots of tools for different departments to use. Enter new guy who needed to collect, aggregate and display a bunch of data. My boss was like, send Wish a calendar invite so you can tell her what you want and she'll set it up for you. New guy was having none of that and insisted he was going to do it himself. Well, a week later, he finally has this shitty sheet that doesn't have half the information we need. And we have to have the numbers for the state by tomorrow. So my boss asks me to fix it and new guy is like, yeah, okay. That's not really possible. This is as good as it's going to get. 2 hours later, I send them both a fully functional and automated sheet that does everything we need. And we'll be able to use it indefinitely, which means next time and every time the stupid state report is due, it will already be done. New guy was like, I would have added that in if it had more time. New guy sucks. I don't understand these people that cannot admit that someone did something much better than they did and compliment them. Plus, his excuse is basically admitting that his time management is shit. Thanks for figuring out Google Sheets and helping everyone in your work. I once went to a museum with my sister and her friend, who I hadn't met before. We got to the Greek art bit and her friend started telling me how she was super into Greek myth. And I thought that was cool, because I was, unbeknownst to her, doing a master's in it at the time, and also keeping a blog of myth retellings, which was pretty popular, and it was a relief to have something in common with this stranger. She then got weirdly haughty and told me she probably knew more myths than I did. So, being polite, I didn't challenge her on it and just asked her to tell me her favorite so that we could have a conversation about it. She proceeded to tell me the myth of Daedalus and the Minotaur. I asked her how she'd heard of that one, because it's fairly obscure. She told me she'd read it on a viral blog post on a blog about mythology. It was my blog. A buddy mine was at a concert in bad seats and started complaining about it via Twitter. All of a sudden the band starts reading some tweets and calls my friend up to sit on stage for a couple songs. They sit him at the piano and during the next song, they jokingly go okay piano solo. The crowd laughs for a second, but then my buddy just starts jamming out as he plays piano in his band. Talk about dream moment getting to play with your favorite band. I once challenged a girl who was a friend to football, not knowing she grew up with a table in her house and older brothers. I even, jokingly, put money on the game. Well, I learned a bit about humility that night. The icing on the cake was when she drove me to an ATM to get her the money. Basketball. I'm a very unassuming looking guy. 5'8", 150 pounds. Not a tattoo to be found. But back in the day, I was pretty athletic and could hang in games with fringe D1/ semi-pro guys. But I can't emphasize how much I didn't look like it at all. Anyway, in college, hanging out in someone's room, It came up that I'd play a bit, and some dude I didn't know started running his mouth about how he could destroy me. Just wouldn't stop talking. I gave him every out, until it basically became personally offensive. Other guys were a bit tired of this asshole hanging around, and they knew I could play. So we all trooped over to the gym, late as duck in the dead of winter, so we could settle things. 11-0 the first game. Not sure if we played after that, but I remember it was 11-0 because I made sure to not let the guy score, and I'm a pretty mellow guy and usually would have laid off and let him score a couple when it was clear that I was better. But this guy was a real asshole, so I just clamped down on him start to finish. I blocked a ton of his shit. He stopped hanging around nearly as much after that, so I was kind of a hero to the rest of the guys. Like Street Patrick drove that snake out of our nation. Edit. Now that I think of it, being a short, skinny white guy who didn't try to look like I was a player. Every time I stepped onto a new court, I had every other person on the floor just automatically dismiss me. You get used to it. Respect, in this case, had to be 100% earned. Every time. I remember one time, after college, I moved to a new city to start a new job. New coworkers were looking for a fourth guy to fill out their 3-on-3 team. They were not shy in expressing their doubts about me and how well I'd be able to hang with them. By the end of our first practice, they were telling me I should have played at the local D1 school. Edit. I wasn't that good, but it's the thought that counts. By our first game, they were clearing out when I had the ball. Those days are long gone, and I've moved on to other interests. But I'm very thankful that I had those experiences. My uncle challenged Jack Nicklaus to a golf game in college. Without a clue. The humiliation burns him to this day. While I'd never claim I was an expert, I used to be pretty damn good at pool. My aunt and uncle had a pool table downstairs and my parents for a variety of reasons would go over regularly and spend all day there. There was nothing else for us, me and my brother, to do, so we just played pool all day for years. Eventually we got bored and saw that he had a book on trick shots, so we started doing that for fun. Never really mastered them, but they made for really good practice in understanding how to get the ball to do what you want. So anyway, for my buddy's 20th birthday he wanted to go to a pool hall and invited a ton of people. Then he told he it was going to be a tournament, drinks for individual games, and a 50/50 type of deal for the winner. He gets half regardless because it was his birthday. Insisted I come, and I caved eventually. Get there. First game, they break, and that was the only shot they got. Rest of mine were pretty similar. At the end I just looked at him. Told you not to invite me. Found out after that a bunch of them had never even played pool before. Felt pretty bad, so I took the money and bought everyone drinks with it. I would never go as far to say that I'm a fencing expert, but I have been fencing casually for about 5 years total, and consider myself pretty good for someone who's casual. A new person came to our fencing practice and demanded of a few men that we do a King of the Hill style matchup. I couldn't tell exactly what it was, but I could smell the toxic behavior rolling off of him when everyone declined. But he continued to insist we do it. He somehow fixated on me, and I decided I'd give it a go on a normal 15-point bout. Initially I always fence one style, in order to test out my opponent, before switching to a style to trump this. So the first few points I see him cheering himself on as he established a 1-2 point lead, by 4-2 in his favor. I already figured out all the flaws in his fencing style, and proceeded to get the next 10 points without losing one round. I could see the guy fuming at the end when I beat him 15-5. It was a good feeling. A guy I went on a date with tried to serenade me with his okay piano skills. He was incredibly patronizing to me and tried to explain to me what the notes were even when I told him I'm also a pianist. So after his endless explanations I asked him to move over on the bench so I can try to play. I'm a 2-time Carnegie Hall pianist. He never called me back afterwards. Worth it. A neighbor on my block in Brooklyn challenged me to a pizza bake-off. I recently catered pizza for my daughter's school and word got around the neighborhood my pizza was pretty darn good. My first thought was, This guy is a Brooklyn native. My pizza will be shite compared to his. But there was something about him bragging that I couldn't resist the challenge. He talked up how pizza was in his blood, how his dad ran the pizza place around the corner years ago. I remained silent and let my skills answer for themselves. I got a buddy to let us use one of Baker's Pride ovens at his restaurant. We even had total strangers try our pizzas. Every last person chose my pizza over his. I never mentioned to him that I've worked in pizza places almost every day for the last 30 years. I never mentioned that when I'm not working at a pizza place I'm making pizzas at home at least once every 2 days. I never mentioned that at 9 years old I knew that I wanted to be a pizza man. Here I'm 45 and getting ready to start my own pizza business. Not me but my brother and best friend. We were in Baltimore for a baseball weekend in 2009 and hanging out at a bar across from Camden Yards. They had a Silver Strike bowling video game. At our local bar back in Boston we had one as well. I'm decent at the game, but my brother and buddy were ducking amazing at this game. Bowling 300 games and whatnot. So two dudes are playing this game and drinking. We ask them if we can play when they're done. They ask if we want to play them. We said sure. My brother and buddy destroy these guys like it wasn't even close. These dudes said it was a fluke and they wanted a rematch, but this time for a round of beers. Again, Annihilation City, but they kept wanting to play to eventually win a game. No lie. After 13 rounds of beers they finally gave up. They were great guys. We saw them the next day at the same bar and they walked up to us with beers in hand already and said rematch. To this day we still hang out with them whenever we go to Baltimore, and to this day, they have never won. Edit for details. The guys were buying 2 beers each time they lost a game to the 2 guys they lost to. For my brother and friend, the beers were Natty Bob, which is Baltimore's cheap gross awesome beer. I can't remember the price, but they were under $2 a piece back then. They would buy the beers and they'd just start piling up on the table next to the machine. So we were all just drinking them. I'd say around 25 to 30 beers between the 5 of us in 4 or 5 hours. Tab was probably 60-ish bucks for beers, but we were there all night getting wings and a million apps, so we all just paid the tab anyways. My office announced a laser tag team building event 2 weeks after I played in the laser tag Ultrazone National Championships, which were an actual thing in 1997. Edit, sigh. No. This is not a him reference, which I have to specify every ducking time I talk about it. When working as a teacher I beat a lot of students in Pokemon battles, cause they didn't think of me being like 15 years ahead of them in fighting experience. Noobs. Not a physical challenge, but I sell building materials for a living. Think Home Depot, but for guys that build skyscrapers and stadiums. There has been many occasions where an old man with zero construction knowledge tries to lecture me on what I do for a living. My landlord tried blaming me for damage to the kitchen cabinets, but didn't know that I'm in construction and I'm very familiar with home building codes. They placed the cabinets too close to the stove and the glue that held the laminate had melted. When I was around 10 there was an old man with Alzheimer's in my neighborhood who would often approach my friends and I. He would ask us questions that we obviously didn't know the answer to, such as what's the square root of 2? Which was one of his favorites. One day I decided I'd memorize the square root of 2 to 20 digits. Sure enough he did ask me the question again, and I was totally prepared. He was extremely impressed, and of course he forgot who I was so would continue to ask over and over again. Camped out for tickets to the Phantom Menace. Guy in a group behind me challenged everyone to Star Wars Trivial Pursuit for money. It got to my first turn and I ran the board and won without anyone else getting to go. I felt bad, so I didn't even take his money. He still accused me of having memorized the cards to cheat. Nope. Just seen the original trilogy dozens of times all my life. Chess. I'm a chess master. I think when people hear that they're like, oh he's really good at chess. But what it means is that I've played in international tournaments and beaten other masters and some governing body has given me a title. Anyway, I get challenged a lot by friends who think they are pretty good. What they don't realize is that your average pretty good player is getting destroyed by your average tournament player, and your average tournament player is getting destroyed by a master. In junior high I got challenged at floor hockey by this douche who was good at literally every sport. He was a massive dick and would make fun of me. I sucked at most sports and was not particularly fast, but I played ice hockey growing up and would spend hours on our local basketball court practicing my stick handling. I dusted his ass. I scored a natural hat trick on him. He shut up after that and stopped making fun of me. This kinda qualifies. Not me but my brother. He works for a scientific instrument company as a technical expert in gas chromatography. He and his colleagues went to a trade show to show off their new instrument. A couple of German scientists come up, ask a bunch of questions, breaking the conversation intermittently to speak to each other in German. Little do they know, my brother is fluent in German. He lets them talk amongst themselves until one of the Germans says, in German, "I bet this one is just as shit as the last one." To which my brother replies, in German, "How it is not in fact shit, because they've done a tremendous number of improvements." The two Germans, now stunned that they've been caught, politely thank my brother and apologize and walk away. The ultimate, no, duck you way to have handled that in my opinion. Just graduated as a teacher and I've been working as a casual relief teacher. I play lacrosse, which is a small sport already and even smaller here in Australia. I tried out for the last World Cup team and made it to the final cut. I was team teaching with another teacher who worked at the school. Before the period he spoke to me and said, "Hey mate, we are doing lacrosse today. It's a bit of a not sport and hard to teach, so just wait over there and then you can just help with supervision and discipline." Then walked off. Being a court from an agency, didn't really know how to speak to him / speak up. I tried to speak to him and say that I played, but he didn't give me a second, so I just listened and did my thing. Few minutes into the start of the lesson I grabbed a stick and ball and just started to work my around the class, giving them pointers and hints. The way he was teaching was completely incorrect and I didn't want to say anything, so when the kids broke off into groups, I kinda just taught them correctly. He pulled me over at a drinks break and asked how I knew so much / could perform the skills. I told him how I play lacrosse and my playing history. He asked why I didn't speak up and say anything, and I said I tried to tell him. Anyway, I ended up running the rest of the class and even ended up sitting down with him and going through the correct and easier way to teach the game and skills. While not a pro, I'm pretty darn good at poker. The church I was at had a poker night and I was just going to watch. They insisted I join the 25-cent game. Came home with $200 and they decided to never have a poker night again. I was a competitive swimmer for 14 years, including 4 years of NCAA, but I'm on the shorter side, so people don't assume I was any good. Was at a friend's house on a lake one summer, and a macho guy challenged me to race to a buoy in the middle of the lake to prove something, I guess. The lake is deceptively large, about a half mile across, so I warned him that if he isn't a strong swimmer it could be dangerous. He was running out of gas after about 2 minutes, so I offered to let him off the hook, but he insisted he would finish. I went to the buoy and was swimming back when I found him floundering, so I lifeguard swam him back to the house. His ego took a deserved hit that day. Don't get cocky around water, even if you think you're a strong swimmer. Edit. Thanks a ton for the W and the votes, but I want to emphasize here how quickly this kind of thing can turn dangerous. I was a lifeguard at the time, and there was another lifeguard present, but even so this was a dumb idea. Don't do dumb stuff in water. My brother had claimed that wind parks in Germany were massively unpopular with German citizens and barely producing any energy compared to the German coal industry. I had just finished my thesis on that very topic. I'm not a great swimmer, but there was a time when I would do laps for literally hours. I would go slowly to make sure that I had the energy to do the time I wanted to. This kid challenged me to race. I left him so far behind it was funny. Though he was about to humiliate me in front of his friends. Still waiting to say the words I've been preparing for all my life. You want to play Dr. Mario with me? You absolute fool. Apostrophe. Wasn't me. But there's a story about an old geotechnical engineer who used to work for the company I work for. Several senior staff had to attend a meeting with the client, and some government regulatory staff who were being awkward and not approving the design. This geotech guy is pretty much quiet the whole meeting. Throughout the discussion, the government guy keeps referencing this research document and shooting down anything anybody suggests. Near the end of the meeting, geotech asks government guy if he has the research paper with him. He responds yes and places it on the table. Geotech asks government guy who is the author of the paper, then slides over a business card. Turns out it's geotech's own paper that government guy has been referencing to defend his argument. Government guy went bright red and apparently approved the design the same day. A local mall had a portable climbing wall with a make it to the top and win $100 side. The route was actually pretty challenging. As I walked by, the guy asked me if I'd like to try. Nobody has made it to the top. You think you can do it, buddy? At the time I was ranked top 12 climber in my age group and kind of laughed to myself. After taking my $100 I then proceeded to call the rest of my climbing team, and one by one they went to the mall and claimed their $100. After the fourth person, the guy got suspicious and took the sign down. We later told him we were all nationally ranked competition climbers, and he got a good laugh. The company who owned the rentals was the one who lost the money. He just worked the booth and wasn't the one who lost the prize money. My wife and I were taking an evening cruise for adults in Portsmouth Bay. The ship drove around the shipyard, where my submarine and several others were stationed. My wife and I are having a quiet drink when a really loud know-it-all starts spouting misinformation about each submarine we are driving by, calling them all the wrong class, wrong names, etc. When he literally points to my submarine and says, and that is a 637 class. My wife finally speaks up and says, actually that is a 688. The guy gets all gruff and says, well, how would you know? My wife smiles, hugs my arm, and says sweetly, that's my husband's submarine. It is the Minneapolis St. Paul, SNN 708. He turned beet red while his date laughed. Not me, but a while back a guy I knew from church growing up posted on Facebook something about crusades and medieval Christianity. A girl responded and gave X, Y, Z reasons why he was wrong. The guy responded back with, you don't know what you are talking about. You need to do your research, and linked couple of YouTube links of armchair historians / pastors. She hits him back with a dozen or so academic sources and let him know that she was 3 years in a PhD program studying medieval history. I'm really good at archery. My friend and I rented him a bow at the local range and he wanted to bet me beers for every round. I told him repeatedly, no, you will not win. He could probably get lucky if we did 1 arrow shoot-offs, but he wanted to do proper 3 arrow rounds. He insisted. I drank for free all night. Some Japanese client that studied in France asked me for a translation job, but wanted to change all my sentences to prove she was better than me at my own mother tongue. She ended up writing something grammatically correct, but that sounded so horribly sexual that if you tried and googled the terms you would only find porn and erotic novels. I had to tell my boss she was forcing me to write porn because it was for a mascara brand that was supposed to be sold in France, so he could stop her, and after that she stopped trying to best me. Shotgunning beers. He lost and wanted a second go, then proceeded to fall down after second round loss. My nephew challenged me to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate once. We had a golf workouting and he challenged me at golf. Now I've played golf my whole life. I also played in high school and have played at public courses every year since. He did not know this. The first hole, he gets to witness a 200-yard drive down the middle. He tries to play it off like I got lucky, but no. Every hole after that was the same. He drank a lot after the first couple holes. He, to this day, refuses to say I won because we didn't keep a score record. My dad was into video games before they were really a thing. He had a Magnavox Odyssey, Intellivision, etc. In the 80s you could rent Nintendos and games from video stores. He would do this when he visited, and I would almost always smoke him at whatever game. I didn't see him that much, but he was visiting, and decided to rent one in the game Double Dribble, Old Northeast's basketball game. It was pretty new at the time and he knew I didn't really like basketball. He played it all day, while I was in school, and when I got home he challenged me to a game. The look on his face when his 10-year-old son beat him by 20 points or so was priceless. My friends and I basically rented every game when it came out, and I had played this one a lot. I mean, it's sports but it is still a video game. I was good at games. Karma time is now my teenagers can regularly beat me at just about anything. Co-worker, I'm pretty good at running. I run every day. I could probably beat you in a marathon. They didn't know I used to be a pro runner. Ran under 14 minutes in the 5k, sub 29 in the 10k, and under 15 hours for 100 miles on trails. Won a national title even. So I agreed to run with them and jumped in the local marathon with no training. I took the prize purse and made myself a few $100 and took everyone out for beers with it. Was an interesting next Monday at work. Guitar Hero. That poor bastard didn't know what he was getting into. He suggested we play and was making joking comments about how he could totally beat me. We played on expert and I absolutely demolished him. My man was even struggling to hit the orange notes SMH. A Tinder date bet me dinner that I couldn't beat her in Smash. I've been playing competitively for around 6 years, so she ended up paying for dinner. My buddy was dismissing my advice to another friend about Overwatch because I don't play ranked at all. I did my placement games that day and ranked 3 full leagues above him, and have only risen since then. Hey, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.